Hello class. In this video we are going to review inputs and outputs in C#. So let's remind ourselves of some basic data types in C#. We have integers which hold whole numbers, doubles that hold fractional numbers, and strings that hold printable characters. When we are dealing with inputs and outputs, we are really going to be focusing on this string data type. Data coming in to the application comes in as pressed keys, which are strings. Data going out, of course, are displayed as printable characters, which are also strings. Operations between data types like to work with themselves. So integers and integers produce integers, doubles and doubles produce doubles, strings and strings produce strings. But if I try to do something like a string with a number in it plus an actual number, we get an error, because strings and numbers don't work well together. So because we are dealing with strings when we do inputs and outputs, we have to learn how to convert between different data types, try to get them to be strings. If I want to convert a numeric type to a string type, I can use the toString method. So here I have a variable, an integer variable x, and I assign it an integer value 3. If I were to use the x.toString syntax here, this is going to return the character 3, or the string value 3, a printable 3. If I have a double variable y, and I'm storing the value 3.14. If I call y.toString, I get the printable version of that, the string characters 3.14. If I want to convert in the other direction and go from strings to numeric, I can use the parse method. The parse method takes a string value as an input, and it returns the number value if it's possible to convert this string to a number. So for example, int.parse tries to convert the string character 3 into the number 3. Double.parse tries to convert the string character 3.14 into the double value 3.14. Now if I pass a value like kitten, the string value kitten, into one of these parse methods, we're going to get an error, and we will learn how to deal with that later. When we are creating printable strings, there are some characters that are special. Either we can't see them, or they're not visible. And so what happens is we have this escape character, a backslash character, which we can pair up with another character, and these will represent special printable characters in C#. For example, backslash and an n, this combination refers to printing a new line. Backslash t prints a tab. If I wanted to actually print the backslash, I would have to backslash the backslash. And if I wanted to print a double quote, which is the character we use to define a string, we have to backslash the double quote. So here I have an example of what this means. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 printable characters here. Even though I have a bunch of backslashes in there, this represents 7 printable characters. First is the letter A, then a backslash T will print a tab, backslash double quote will print one double quote, B, double quote, tab, C. So if I were to display this line of text, it would look like A, tab, double quote, B, double quote, tab, C. So using these escape characters, these special characters, we should be able to format any type of text that we want to see on the console. To print values to the console, we use the write and the WriteLine method. Both of these methods belong to the console class. The write method prints whatever string we give it, and it only prints those characters. So if I say console.write the string hello period, we will print hello period. If I use the WriteLine method, not only do we print the string we pass in as an argument, but we also add a new line character at the end of that string. So we are writing the text plus a line. So write only prints the text, WriteLine prints our text plus a new line character. We can do formatted output using this placeholder syntax, which we will discuss. This placeholder syntax allows us to put a placeholder in our string that a value will be inserted at a later time. The placeholder syntax consists of a pair of curly brackets and a number inside, an integer number inside the curly brackets. When I use the write or WriteLine method, the first argument I can pass in is a string, followed by a comma, and then I can list as many values as I want. Each of these variables or values that come after the string, these are the values I want to insert into my string. Now, if I were to count the values or variables that I'm passing after my string, if I start counting starting with the number 0, that count number is what matches up with the integer number inside the placeholder. So for example, if I only have one value I want to insert, I could count it as a 0. If I have two values, I could count the first one as 0, the second one as 1. 3 values, first one 0, second is 1, next one is 2, and then if I wanted to attach more, it would be 3, 4, and so on. So here I have 3 variables with values assigned into them. In my first example, I say my name is, and I have a placeholder. Now, I don't know what's going to be printed here yet. I'm just going to take whatever value is in the name variable and insert it into my string before I print it. So in this case, name holds the string Anna, so this would print my name is Anna. On my next example, I have 2 placeholders. All right. So the first one has the index 0, which refers to the 0th variable that comes after the string. So name is going to be inserted first, and then the 1 is going to match up with the 1th term. Age will be inserted second. So this would print Anna is 22 years old. Now, you do not have to put these numbers in incrementing order. It doesn't have to go 0, 1, 2. Here I have an example where I have a placeholder with the number 0, a placeholder with the number 2, and then a placeholder with the number 1. The only thing that matters is that these numbers match up with the order of the variables passed after the string. So here I have the 0 will match up with the 0th term, name. 2 will match up with the 0, 1, 2th term, age. And then the 1th will match up with the 0, 1th term, GPA. So this should print name, Anna, comma, age 22, that's the age, has a GPA of 3.5, which is the GPA. With our placeholder syntax, we can also insert special characters that let us format the values being passed in. There are many different formatting syntaxes available out there. If you Google it, you can spend a day on this stuff. But just the most basic ones are, if I do a :F after my placeholder index number, this will insert the value to 2 decimal places. It outputs the number as if it had 2 decimal places. I can specify the number of decimal places by putting an additional integer after my f. So for example, 0:F3 will insert a number and display that result to 3 decimal places. If I use a :C, this is a currency formatting syntax, which adds a $ plus 2 decimals by default. And then here are some examples of, instead of a colon, if I use a comma, I can specify the number of spaces in the string that I want to reserve to insert my value. So for example, 0:10 would say, okay, I'm going to put 10 characters and then insert my value right justified into these 10 spaces. A negative number means I'm going to reserve an amount of space and insert the value left justified. Here are some examples. Here I have a double value, 1.23 or 123.456789. It's just a double number. And if I have my insert syntax and I'm inserting my value, we just get the value inserted. No changes. However, if I use the :F syntax, we insert the number and we round it to 2 decimal places. F4 is going to round it to 4 decimal places, which we see here. :C is going to convert this to a currency. So we're going to get a $ added and then round to 2 decimal places. 0:14. Here what we are doing is we are reserving 14 characters. If I were to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 characters were reserved and I inserted my value into that space right justified. Negative 14 inserts it into that value left justified. So in this case, it differs from just inserting the value because I am also printing 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces here. And then we can combine these types of syntax. So I can say 0, I want to reserve 14 spaces for this value, right justified, and I want to format this value as currency. So here I've reserved 14 spaces, inserted the value, formatted as currency, 2 decimals, right justified. The best way to get comfortable with these syntax, these formatting syntax, is just to practice them on your own. All right, we've talked about how we can print data to the console. Let's talk about how we can read values in. The ReadLine method pauses the console and allows the user to start typing characters. When the user finally hits the Enter key, all of the characters, except the Enter key itself, is returned as a string of text. So for example, if I were to call console.readline in my code and type the characters A, B, C and then hit Enter, then the string value A, B, C will be returned from this method. If I were to type the characters 1, 2, 3 and then hit Enter, then the ReadLine would return the characters 1, 2, 3. So notice that because ReadLine always returns a string, even when we are entering in numbers, those values are coming into our program as characters. Now because the ReadLine method returns a value, we have to either save or use that returned value, or else we lose it. We never want to call console.readline just by itself. So here I have an example of saving the user input. So I have created a string variable named input on the left-hand side. I'm using the assignment operator to assign the value returned on the right-hand side. So console.readline pauses the console. Whatever the user types is going to be returned from the ReadLine method, saved into my input variable. And then I can use that input later in my program. So this is saving it, or we can directly use that result by passing it into another method or an expression. So on this line, I'm calling the console.readline. The user types some characters. Those characters are passed back into the parse method, which will try to convert those characters into a number, which will then be saved into this integer variable. And now I can use the integer value later in my program. By combining the WriteLine method and the ReadLine method, we can create user prompts. And a rule of thumb when you're creating a user prompt, you should try to do these 3 things. You should tell the user what to enter first, then you should read in the user's input, and then save or use the result. And if you follow these 3 steps, you will build good user prompts. So here's an example of those 3 steps. First, I'm prompting the user to enter their name. So I'm writing to the console, I'm telling the user, enter your name. This sets them up so that when the screen pauses with the ReadLine method, the user knows what to type. So next I call the ReadLine method, I read in the user's input, and then finally I save the user's input into a variable. Now later in my program I can use that value however I want. So here I have 3 little test problems for you to just test your knowledge. I would encourage you to pause the video, boot up your Visual Studio or your editor, try out these problems, and then in just a moment I'm going to go over some solutions. All right, let's work through these really quickly. Problem 1 says prompt the user to enter their last name, then prompt the user to enter their first name, then print to the console, hello, whatever their first name is, whatever their last name is. Let's set this up. A prompt is a write followed by a read, and then we need to save the result. So let's start doing this. To prompt the user to enter their last name, I'm going to say console.write, enter your last name. I need to tell the user what to enter. Step 2, I need to read in the results. So I'm going to say console.readline. Console.readline pauses the screen and lets the user type in an answer. Now if I don't have a variable on the left-hand side to store the result, this value is going to be tossed off the screen. It's not going to be saved. So step 3 is I'm going to create a variable called last name and assign into it whatever the user typed. So there's our first prompt. Let's build our second prompt. Console.write, enter your first name. Again, we're going to tell the user what to enter. We're going to read in the user's response with console.readline, and then we're going to save the result. So I'm going to say string first name. All right, now we have two values saved. We can use them. So I'm going to print these values to the screen. I don't know what the last name is and the first name is, so I'm going to use the placeholder syntax to just insert whatever data is stored in these two variables. So I'm going to say console.WriteLine. We said hello, and I'm going to create a placeholder that will accept the first name and a placeholder to accept the last name. And then I'm going to insert the first name and the last name. Okay, so just notice here the syntax. I'm creating my string with all of the spacing and syntax that I want, but I'm just putting placeholders where the values need to go. So this space between my two placeholders means I want a space between the value inserted for the first name and the value inserted for the last name. If I wanted to put a period or an exclamation point at the end of this sentence, I would need to put it where it goes in regards to the placeholders, outside of the placeholder syntax. All right, so the 0th value will be inserted into the 0 placeholder. The 0th value will be inserted into the 1th placeholder. We'll run this in a second. All right, let's look at the next line. It says prompt the user to enter in their name. By the way, I want a new line. I want an extra line between this example and the example below. So I'm going to use a \n here at the end of my output statement here, which will print not only our text, but an extra line, and then the WriteLine method will tack another line on it. So this should print a line by itself, and then we will print a new line. Okay, example 2. Prompt the user to enter their name. Then prompt the user to enter their age. Then print to the console how old the user will be next year. So we have two prompts. But one of these prompts is going to have a number coming in. So let's look how we can handle that. So first we'll prompt the user to enter in their name. I'm going to say have a write, console.write, enter your name. And then I'm going to create a string variable called name and assign into it console.readline. Okay, this is a basic string prompt, a write followed by a read, save the result. Now we need to prompt the user to enter in their age. Well, let's start off with a write, console.write, enter your age. Then I can have a console.readline, and if the user enters in a number, I have to convert that number into a they're going to enter a number, but it will come in as a string. So I need to convert that string into a number. So I'm going to wrap the int or the console.readline in an int.parse method. So here's an example of not just saving the value that's returned, but we're using it. We're going to pass the value the user enters into the parse method, which should return a number. So I'm going to say int age is equal to int.parse console.readline. The user enters a value, we try to convert it to the number, save the result. Okay. Now let's print how old they will be next year. I will say console.WriteLine. Next year, the person will be some age years old. And I'm going to insert the name and the age plus 1. So here I have an expression that will resolve first. Anywhere, if you remember from the previous video, anywhere you have anywhere you can put a variable, you can replace with an algebraic expression. So the first placeholder value name will be printed first. Next year, this person's name will be. Then I'm going to take the 1th value, resolve it into a value, and then insert it into the string. All right, final example. Prompt the user to enter in the length of a room in meters. Then prompt the user to enter the width of a room in meters. Then calculate and output the area of the room. Display the area to 2 decimal places. So we have a couple pieces going on here. We have 2 numeric prompts, a calculation, and we want to print the result. So let's just walk through this process. First, let's prompt for the length. I'm going to say console.write, enter room length in meters. And let's allow the user to enter in double values here. So I'm going to say double length is equal to double.parse console.readLine. I'm going to read in, I tell the user what to enter, read in the result. I'm passing that result into the double.parse method to convert the string value into a double, and then saving the result. Let's do the next one, console.write. Enter the room width in meters. Same thing, I'm going to say double width is equal to double.parse console.readline. Telling the user what to enter, reading it in, using that result by trying to convert it from a string to a double, and then saving the result. Now I can do my calculation. I'm going to say double area is equal to length times width. And now it's time to print the results. So I'm going to say console.WriteLine. The room, let's print all three values. I'm going to say the length times width room has an area of, and we will insert the area to 2 decimal places. So I'm going to use the :F syntax. We'll put a period, and now I have to insert my 3 values. So I created my formatted string. I want to say a length times width room. So the first value will be the length, second value will be the width, the last value is the area. So first value is the length, second value is the width, last value is the area. All right. Hopefully this will work. I'm going to make sure I insert a new line character after my second example, and let's run this and test it. All right, first example, we said we wanted to enter the last name. Okay, we could say Solo, and we'll say, what's the first name? Han. Hello, Han Solo. So that worked. So it says, enter your name. We'll say Chewie. Enter your age. We'll say 67. It says, next year, Chewie will be 68 years old. So the second example worked. Let's enter the room length in meters. We'll say 10.5. Enter the room width in meters. We'll say 12.0. It says a 10.5 by 12 room has an area of 126.00. Notice here that when I did not use the :F, that 12 value was just printed as 12. But when I used the :F syntax on the area, it forced us to see the 2 decimal points in the output. All right, I hope this helps as a review for basic inputs and outputs in C#.